Here in a couple of minutes. It's just about 6 o'clock, but we'll give it one more minute. Thank you. Did you start the YouTube? Okay, great. Thank you. And Paul, can you confirm for me really quick that you can hear us okay and see the screen all right?
Yes, looks good, and the recording has begun.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, it is 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll take a second here to stop sharing my screen. And turn on my camera. Tonight, and you also have an option to join this workshop here virtually. So wherever you are, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your evening to hear about our infrastructure recovery progress and what we can expect moving forward in the years to come. And so with that, I will definitely acknowledge, I want to thank Mayor Crowder for joining the call this evening, as well as support staff here with Mark Thomas and the Town of Paradise staff. So thank you so much for making this happen. And our goal as well is to, we are recording this meeting just for your information, and we're going to post this recording to our website so it can be viewed later on our recovery page for the Transportation Master Plan. So with that, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen one more time and start the presentation. So again, thank you again for joining. My name is Mark Maddox, Public Works Director, Town Engineer for the Town of Paradise. And again, this is our first of 4 public workshops under the Transportation Master Plan. I'll get into the later topics in the future dates and times for those meetings at the end of this presentation. But tonight's focus is really going to be a broad, general infrastructure recovery update that's highlighting some of our pre-fire projects, as well as emergency response projects, and then the programs and projects that have been established post-fire in our recovery world. So for those that are joining virtually, again, you can see the meeting is being recorded, will be posted on our website. Your camera and mic are turned off upon entry. And questions will be addressed following the presentation. We'll have a special Q&A session to where staff and I will work through those that are in person and those that raise their hand virtually on Microsoft Teams to go ahead and ask a question. So with that, we'll just kind of play it by ear, and I'll be reading the room here about the in-person participants that would like to ask a question. To view the recorded meeting and additional information, townofparadise.com/recovery. You'll see a link on the left for the Transportation Master Plan. So again, if you're logging in virtually, there's an option to raise your hand, and that's usually in the upper right-hand corner, along with some different reactions. You can raise your hand, and that will indicate to our support staff that you would like to speak at the end of the presentation and ask a question that we will certainly do our best to address here tonight. And if we're unable to address it, we will definitely give you information about how that is going to be addressed in the future. Or follow up with you specifically and provide contact information. So thank you for your patience there. Okay, so for tonight's workshop, we have this agenda, and I'm kind of going to break down the presentation into 3 larger components. One is the foundation, and what I mean by that is how are these projects being driven and how are they developed? Infrastructure projects, then I'm going to go slide by slide through each of the projects in kind of a simplified manner. There's a lot of those that are combined for simplicity in the presentation, but really provide you some insight into just the amount of work going on behind the scenes. I'm grateful that there's some actual construction going on today and throughout town at a few locations, but there's certainly more to come. But those planning efforts are well underway, so I'll highlight those. And then lastly, we'll close with a call to action where we're going to take a step back, look at the overall vision about how these projects are going to be further developed with public participation, as well as delivered for construction. And that's not necessarily a simple process, but I want to provide an opportunity to talk about that and set expectations moving forward with our unique infrastructure world with undergrounding of utilities and other recovery projects. And then again, last, I'll talk about the future meetings and input opportunities, and then we'll close with that general Q&A session. So first, the foundation. As we all know, post-fire, we developed together one of the most comprehensive public outreach and engagement processes that certainly we've been a part of, and that's well-renowned across the country and really something to be proud of about how our recovery should look, and having a document that really specifies where resources should be driven and where the priorities and different tiers of level of projects, as well as town-led versus external partner-led, whether it's healthcare or education. There's so much that goes into this recovery, and we're extremely grateful for this plan and to be a part of it, and address a lot of those topics here tonight when it comes to infrastructure. The recovery plan talked about evacuation routes and creating an interconnected path system, missing road segments, undergrounding utilities, having a walkable downtown, and of course planning and zoning, and all that goes into economic development and creating a vision for Paradise that balances our existing residents and ones that are really deciding if they're going to come back, or those that are going to move to Paradise to call it home for the first time. So this document is crucial, and we're so grateful for that effort led by the North Valley Community Foundation in that preparation. So with that, and really taking a look at the long-term recovery plan, we identified a need to address so many of those goals that are transportation related that we can't just say we want evacuation routes. We need to know how and really look at that at a very deep level. So we were fortunate enough to receive an EDA grant, that's the Economic Development Administration, for $1.8 million at 100%. And again, we're so grateful for that, and it provides us this opportunity to have a complete review of the entire transportation system, establish new goals and policies moving forward, and position the town for future grant funding for implementation. So that's really exciting and part of this work effort here tonight. Some additional scope of work we were talking about before the meeting started here was it's not just roads. There's so much that goes into it in economic development. We're going to have improvements for survey monumentation. We're going to get ahead of utilities coordination and updating standards for both the buildings and right-of-way, and creating some very unique and critical planning documents that will further enable us to bring funding back to Paradise. So at this point, now we have the long-term recovery plan and the EDA grant, and now I want to get into how our project's delivered, and that really falls into two major categories. One being with the fire emergency response, and that really is this, and what I mean about emergency response is the projects that it took to get the town open during evacuation. Those critical 3 to 4 weeks of response included culvert repairs, hazard tree removal, and other projects. And so that process is it's not very simple, but it happens very quickly. So that's kind of a unique process. And for everything else, there really are no shortcuts here on how to deliver recovery projects and our standard projects. So a lot goes into that work, starting with preliminary investigations, project approvals, conceptualizing the projects, performing appropriate environmental reviews for both CEQA, the California Standard for Environmental Review, as well as NEPA, the national equivalent, preparing design documents and plans and specifications and estimates, securing right-of-way, whether the town has adequate property to perform the work for that specific project, utilities coordination. Our environment, I'll talk about later, for utilities is more unique than anything I've ever heard of for an entire community. So we're navigating those waters. Then we have to request those approvals, whether it's FEMA funded or whether it's FHWA, Federal Highways, Caltrans. There's just such a complex approval process that we have to follow and proceed with. And then construction, and that, of course, is going to take time, and that's what people see at the end. But most of our projects that we'll be talking about tonight are in this first 2 columns on the standard project delivery. And as much as I'd love to be in construction on all of it, We're just not there quite yet, but we do have a plan and progress is being made. So next on the portion of the presentation, I'm going to highlight our infrastructure projects, and I'm going to separate these into categories only because it's more easy to kind of comprehend the sequence of how they were developed and in a chronological manner. So pre-fire, again, emergency response, permanent repairs, and recovery. So pre-fire, Skyway at Black Olive Signal, this was, again, completed summer of last year, but again, it exists in our capital improvement program. This was a grant-funded project that installed the signal at the four-way intersection for safety, and we have been very pleased with the outcome of that project, and I know we've heard a lot of great responses from those turning left to and from Black Olive Drive at Skyway, so glad that that's complete. So now to where we're under construction, pre-fire project, our Almond Street multi-modal improvements. I don't love the name of that project, but I do at the same time because so much is going into it. It's not just roads, it's not just sidewalks or lighting, it's all of it. This is the most complete project the town pre-fire would have delivered over the last 30 years. It's about $8 million with mostly grant funds. And I'd love, if you didn't see this on Facebook, we have a drone footage, and I want to credit Rebuild Paradise Foundation for providing this video. And we're just so grateful for their efforts in the community and providing this footage as well. Kind of taking a bird's eye view of the project corridor for Almond Street. It's all the way from Pearson to Elliott Road. And as you fly over, it's not much activity at this point. But what we're really excited about is to do a few repeated flights as the project develops. But if I can invite you to that vision of a complete street and infrastructure that supports a downtown and have thriving businesses and throw in a sewer, we're going to be there and have something really special. So with this project, we're currently, you can kind of start to see coming into view the storm drain work and get rid of those open ditches on the roadside edges. But once the underground work is done by the town, and we're so grateful for PID also coordinating their water line replacement effort, we're going to install sidewalks, curb gutter, drainage, like I said, lighting, landscaping, what else? And bike paths, and it's just going to be a really beautiful corridor and serve the town for generations to come. And I love just seeing all of the green trees. I know we all do. So that's great, and that project's under construction, and really excited for that to be moving forward. So back to the presentation. I will then tie it in with the Paradise Gap Closure Complex. This is essentially filling in the gaps of that infrastructure. We secured Almond Street first, and I kind of said this the other day in our Measure C meeting or Measure V meeting that when good things start happening, it's easier to build and you gain this momentum. So pre-fire, we were able to secure on top of Almond Street grants for Birch, for Foster, and Black Olive in that downtown core for the same scope: sidewalks, paths, lighting, landscaping, and road rehab. So that's fantastic. And again, through grants and local matches. And again, we're so grateful that the long-term recovery plan nexus still points back to making Paradise safer, stronger, and better. So both of those projects are under construction. We're experiencing delays for reinforced concrete pipe, but we're still on schedule at this point, understanding that completion isn't contractually obligated till spring of 2022. But we've got great local partners in Knife River Construction, and they're contracting subs that they have on the job, aiming to get this job done before the end of the year. And I guess I would be remiss in saying Party in the Park is still on, and I do want to advise and hope that you can join us there starting the 16th. But I will say, if you're coming to Party in the Park, expect some different landscape on availability for on-street parking. We're working on our side to propose maybe have some additional gravel areas on the other side of Pearson Road near Joyland's Candies on the old Jeffords Building property. So we'll have a couple of different options, but be prepared, bring some water, and you might have to walk a little bit longer than you normally would have, and we'll have some special designated ADA parking there as well at the north end of the park in the gravel area. So we'll see you at the party. Okay, getting back to the projects under construction again, our Pentz Road Safe Routes to School project, formerly known as the Ponderosa Elementary Safe Routes to School project. We're so grateful for this effort as well. Another grant funded with minor local match, installing a multi-use pathway on the school side of the corridor. And after the fire, to be quite honest, we weren't sure quite when this project would be delivered. And we're so grateful for the California Transportation Commission and Caltrans who stood by the town and said, you delivered this project on your schedule. We're here for Paradise. And so it wasn't our first priority in getting this under construction. And then when we were coordinating with Paradise Unified School District, they identified their intent to reopen this facility in a new and improved manner with so much construction going on the school side. So it's really something special that we're all working towards for a grand opening later this year in August for both the town section of in front of the school to be complete, as well as the school to have their work done on the facility and really welcoming those students and providing excellent education for our community and our children in the town. So again, what is also special about this project I'll mention on the scope is that multi-use pathway here, and you see this as kind of the first effort of widening in Paradise, and that's kind of a theme of things to come. It's very difficult to widen roads and add capacity, but we're already doing it with this pre-fire project for two reasons. One, we have a center two-way left turn lane. If you remember, it was quite congested at pickup and drop-off periods on Pentz Road. But we have a center two-way left turn lane in front of the school planned for construction, as well as this multi-use pathway on the school side. And so that's going to be a double-use facility that on the 99.9% use of that facility will support those that are biking and riding for recreation, for transportation, the kids going to school, if they want to. So we're really excited, but for that additional double use, one of the lessons learned and tools identified in the long-term recovery plan, there's a higher desire for additional facilities that could potentially support ingress and egress for emergency vehicles or evacuating traffic. So this is going to be our first go, and we're grateful that the project scope was already consistent with that kind of balance of we don't vision a 5-lane freeway for Pentz Road, right? And so there has to be some sort of context and balance for those facilities. And so one lane in each direction with a center two-way left turn lane with a double-use multi-path on the roadside edge is one of those visions that we're advancing forward, and we definitely would appreciate and seek community feedback on those, and we'll have more about that here later and in future workshops. I'll try and pick up the pace a little bit. This is a pre-fire grant, systemic safety improvements. We've got some signing and striping projects to deliver, and we're going to integrate those with other recovery projects for road rehab. Okay, so we're getting to campfire emergency response projects now. I'll talk about guardrails. So metal beam guardrails with wooden posts are combustible. So part of reopening the town was installing metal beam guardrails with metal posts and having those be more resilient. And so those projects are complete at the different locations through town. Emergency response for culverts. We had so many culvert failures where we had plastic pipes. And again, talk about a lesson learned. When you have HDPE, plastic, I'm not going to go through that abbreviation for you all, but HDPE plastic pipes, those melt and those are combustible. And we saw a lot of unique sequence of events unfold through the projects where it's really unfathomable to not know that it's possible for a pipe to completely melt underneath a 40-foot roadway because there was combustible materials in the pipe or at the outlet or outflow of the pipe. And so that was very challenging, and we certainly didn't want the public traveling on those roads. And so there was a lot in that 3-week evacuation period. There was a lot of culvert repair work going on. Signals, Skyway at Pearson, one of our only damaged traffic signal, and you'll know just as well as probably all of us that a temporary repair was made during the evacuation period. and we're processing that with our insurance, and actually just had a great notification today that we are approved to move forward with repairs to start get a traditional pole back in the ground and take down this temporary wired situation across Skyway at Pearson. Okay, so now I'm going to move to permanent repairs. I say emergency response repairs is something different than permanent because there's some follow-up that we have to do. And one of those is we could acknowledge that emergency project for the lighting on the Trailway, even though it was just constructed right before the fire, that didn't rise to the level of an emergency to get those electrical repairs done. So we're still working with our insurance. We do have some development there also, and look forward to delivering that project. And I'm so sorry, I do have a typo that I will just fix right now. I think this is definitely going to be done, if not by the end of this year, definitely in 2022. So let's see. Always dangerous performing repairs during a live presentation, but I wanted to make sure that was taken care of. Okay, so we also have more culverts to repair. So during the evacuation period, there are some non-emergency culverts that need to be replaced, and then there's some additional plastic pipes that need to be replaced with reinforced concrete pipe. So we're excited to keep moving those forward, and those are kind of the next level of projects in our critical path for the town of Paradise in delivering these as we work towards an overall completion goal and coordinating the final paving. We don't want to pave this road if there's a culvert adjacent to it and we have to replace it to concrete pipe. And then have to dig into that fresh pavement thereafter. So that's one of our kind of pillars of guiding recovery and infrastructures, sequencing it correctly. Okay, hardscape. Again, if you live here, drive around, been here, you know there's so much work to do and you're not seeing the progress, but I'll tell you, again, a failed sidewalk doesn't rise to the emergency level, so we have to follow all of those normal design processes. As much as I'd love to get an excavator in there and rip it out and put back brand new, especially on the Skyway corridor, we're not there yet, but the design and the processes, the environmental review that we have to go through, those take time, but they're well underway, and I can definitely vision this project moving forward in completion for 2022 and 2023. Signs are another one. So many signs were damaged in the fire, and that's a project that's going to be complete in 2022, and is almost ready and have that approval through federal highways to go ahead and start replacing the damaged signs. Obviously, the critical ones for regulatory speed limits and other regulatory signs, those were replaced as soon as possible, but there's actually quite a few other signs for supplemental warning signs that still need to be replaced. Okay, the big one, and the one that I've been most excited about, and if you've seen us at the community meetings, we could spend an hour talking about how great this project is, but due to some great forethought in the town's pavement management program, the North Valley Community Foundation taking a chance on the town and providing a data inventory using lasers. And I'm serious, like with driving a van with lasers, inventorying every crack on the road, and the great work from Mark Thomas, who's an engineering company that supported the town. We were able to provide justification and really prove the damage to our town roadways from here on the left in the orange circle. For example, this is a sample road in town where we collected this data in January of 2019. And then again, we did the same process and collected the data for September 2019 as debris removal was wrapping up. So with that data collection, we were able to provide really a irrefutable evidence about quantifying that damage of the impact of all of the trucks and the fire, the burn scars on the roads. And so with that, the initial $25,000 leveraged early on with North Valley Community Foundation has yielded almost $77 million of total projects. So we're really excited about that, where we have a plan to rehabilitate all publicly owned and maintained roadways to account for these campfire damages. So with that all in mind, patience and the other projects and the sequencing. And we see this overall vision coming together with the undergrounding of utilities. So we expect construction to start, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, in 2020-22, but probably not reach full completion where the entire town has been repaved in 2025. So moving on, now I'll transition to kind of recovery projects that I've developed further. I talked already about the transportation master plan. We're here, yes. Thank you again for spending your evening with us. And this plan is really going to be crucial in guiding the next steps, and especially getting the public input about the priorities and talking about our post-fire kind of needs for circulation and transportation. The overall effort for the transportation master plan will be complete in early 2022. Okay, so we also received a grant for a storm drain master plan. It's not very exciting to talk about, but from an engineering perspective, I'm really excited about this project because it is going to take a look at all of our storm drain infrastructure and make sure that those are appropriately sized, and what are the mitigation measures that we need to be implementing improvements to, again, get rid of those roadside ditches and have facilities that work. One thing that we do know, in light of the fire, all of our vegetation was burned, and there's increased runoff and sedimentation. So this plan is going to have a comprehensive look at all of that and help us guide projects moving forward. And we're really well positioned to apply for future projects through hazard mitigation grant programs. So that's our goal, to finish this planning document and apply for construction funds. Okay, so underground utilities, this is not a town-led project, but we are certainly a partner, and we all are in the community in this effort. So post-fire PG&E announced their intent to underground all electric facilities in Paradise, and so we are extremely grateful that they heard the desire of the community to have wooden combustible roadside poles be removed and have those facilities be underground. So that project is underway. We are coordinating with PG&E regularly. We are really working towards great progress in this realm to achieve the town's objective of having all utilities underground at the end of 2025. Okay, another project is our broadband study I think there's not a better example of how the world has changed since the long-term recovery plan, but we're here doing a workshop, a virtual workshop here, and we have people in person and remoting in from who knows where. But we're certainly grateful for this project, again sponsored by the portion of which sponsored by the North Valley Community Foundation. But we're really looking to explore potential of a municipally driven broadband service, which increases access and affordability of high-speed internet, and that has just such broad benefits from education, healthcare, and business for Paradise. So that study is wrapping up, and we'll be excited to report next steps to the council and the community very soon. Okay, this one is not necessarily transportation related, but I thought I would be remiss to not mention it here tonight. A town-wide project to provide an early warning system in some sort of fashion, whether that's a siren or verbal notifications over loudspeakers. That initial study has been completed, and we've submitted construction funding application to the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. That's with FEMA and Cal OES, and we're waiting to hear back on the allocation of construction funds. But that project is moving forward, and we're really excited and hopeful that that will be approved shortly and get this project done. Sewer, another small one, but we have the Paradise Sewer Project. Again, we could talk all night on just this one alone, but for the last 50 years or so, give or take a decade, the town has been talking about the need for sewer in Paradise. And so if you're hearing about this for the first time, I encourage you to check out our website at paradisesewer.com. But the quick version for tonight's webinar is this is our proposed sewer service area. we are exploring, we are in the environmental impact review, environmental impact report phase of the project to provide a centralized wastewater treatment, collection, transmission, treatment, and dispersal system, and exploring a regional partnership with the city of Chico. There's meetings dedicated that are hosted, and you can find those on our website and the sewer website. You can get involved at so many different touch points. We're still we're in what's called the public scoping process that concludes here in a couple of days. But we encourage you to reach out. There's so many different opportunities to get engaged on this project. But at the end of the day, this project is about affordable housing, bringing residents back to paradise, and improving the environmental quality of our groundwater basin and taking kind of our highest density uses for where we have extremely poor soils, high groundwater, and small parcels, and come up with an approach that really unlocks that potential for recovery for paradise. Okay, so now I'll draw a line here for the projects that I'm talking about now for a couple of slides are unfunded. And I mean unfunded knowing that, one, they're being developed in ways that we've heard the community talk about them and desire to see them, as well as a part of the scope of work with the Transportation Master Plan. And so this is where the important dialogue about projects and priorities and how things move forward and where the town continues to push with our legislative partners and our grant opportunities and what we apply for and what's important to the community. So widening and capacity is certainly one of those big ticket items that has millions of dollars in impact, but it's crucial for the recovery of paradise to be more resilient and stronger and move forward with projects that make sense in adding capacity for evacuation and enabling more affordable housing on those evacuation corridors. So for Neal Road, Pentz Road, Upper Skyway, Upper Clark, those are some of the what I would call bare minimum projects that I think we would not be hitting the mark on the community's expectation to talk about how we can change a critical evacuation route from literally being 20-foot wide pavement section for much of the town to something that makes sense for the road. So that's our kind of description here for tonight's presentation, and none of those are secure at this point, and we're seeking community feedback and input. Also, Elliott Road Extension, our 1994 general plan talked about Elliott Road Extension for a long time and establishing, or not for a long time, but is back all the way back in 1994. This project was identified as a priority due to the lack of east-west connections throughout Paradise. I think we can speak to it's hard not to draw everything back to the campfire, but in that the way that event unfolded, having additional east-west connection for Pentz between Billy Road and Pearson Road would have been an invaluable tool to help clear that congestion and providing egress over to Clark Road. So again, not a funded project, and I don't want to get property owners super excited here, but I want to tell and inform the community that these are the types of projects that we're looking at and want to get feedback if this is if you're hearing it the same way we see it, that this is still something that should be advanced in the development of the Transportation Master Plan. Okay, so moving from there to thinking even bigger about something that could work on a daily basis in addition to the most extreme evacuation scenario is providing that redundant, more resilient evacuation tool to provide regardless of where an incident developed, whether it's from the Butte Creek Basin or along the Neal Road corridor, or again from the east, having those east-west connections that tie in Pentz, Clark, Neal, and Skyway are critical. And interesting enough that this project has been developed, and I think we're working through it. I'll just move to, we've moved this project forward to Congressman LaMalfa, and we are so grateful that his office has identified the first phase, a portion of the environmental review, as a priority for him and as a member designated project. And so there's been some developments on potential return of earmarks, and the environmental review is under consideration for approval in the upcoming federal budget to look at this project further. And so the first phase of the project would connect Pentz Road to Edgewood Lane, Sawmill, and South Libby. And we identified that as the highest priority project that literally could have saved lives if it was in place at the time of the Camp Fire, and having that ability to provide connections for those long streets that do not have an outlet. So this is largely unfunded. We are pursuing federal approval and new grants, and we're excited to see if there's any traction here and to get it moving forward. Interestingly enough, in some recent research about the project prior to the town's incorporation, it looks as if a good portion, if not the entire portion, was deeded to the county. The alignment of this project was deeded to the county back in the 20s and 30s. And so that was some really great developments that we're excited to learn about and explore further. And I really think if the property is there and we can secure some funding, this would be really extraordinary for the recovery of Paradise and providing that east-west connection that could serve in any future evacuation event, providing that flexibility. All right, checking time. I think we're doing okay. Trying to keep the presentation as short as I can and get to the Q&A session. So moving on to call to action. So what's next and how can you be a part, whether you're here in person or on the call live or watching this as a recording. So you see we have about 40 plus projects from over 17 unique funding sources. Our capital improvement program project list is over 125 million of funded projects over the next 5 years. And for some perspective, pre-fire, we would be high-fiving like those people about a $10 to $12 million CIP for projects that we could deliver for the town. And so we have such an opportunity in Paradise to really, like the long-term recovery plan said, come back better, safer, stronger, and really these projects are going to help move those forward. Aside from that, we have the Paradise Sewer Project. We're actively seeking $182 million for that project. Design and right-of-way at $30 million, and construction $152 million. Our goal and charter from the Paradise Town Council, and hearing the input from the community back from the 2017 feasibility study, is find a path that does not involve our special sewer service area that's highlighted in blue to finance the entire cost. And so what we're talking with our funding partners is we want the entire capital project, the $182 million financed entirely, and find a way to incentivize connections. And so when Paradise ratepayers look at connecting and have a monthly bill, it's in the realm of 30 to 60, I can't even put a number, dollars per month, and we can't finance this across the 1,400 parcels as we originally were considering back in 2017. So what I'm trying to say is the sewer project is we're seeking those construction funds out up front, so that when it comes time for the monthly operations and maintenance, we will have that rate so as low as possible so that it's reasonable and it makes sense for Paradise. In addition, some of those widening projects and that I talked about are about $150 million plus of what we're looking for and asking for. And again, trying to be the national leader in recovery and kind of in this nationally watched recovery, and bringing these funds to Paradise and show that we can come back from this, and we are coming back from this, and it's a momentum that really can't be stopped. So we're so excited for what's next. So now to make it all come together, this is a kind of a graphical view of that, of 116 million of how we're projecting that's going to come through in these individual projects. And these lighter blue bars are representative of our road projects that we're expecting to be complete over the next couple of years. So, and what that really means is that as much as, like I talked about earlier, as much as we'd love to start building and paving now, we have a lot of work ahead of us to coordinate and move these and time them correctly. Whether it's our own storm drain projects, PG&E, AT&T, Comcast, Paradise Irrigation District, we all have a role to play in the recovery and infrastructure, and we are going to do our best to coordinate, meet monthly, meet as frequently as we can actually, to strategize, plan, and create what we're calling kind of a roadway paving checklist, readiness checklist, where we're going to identify all of these segments of town, all of town roadways between certain limits, and kind of have this checklist like I have on this slide and say, is tree removal done? Yes. Is storm drain done? Is PG&E done? And once everybody signs off, what we're going to see on an annual basis is more and more streets reach that completion level. And what the town will do from there is say, okay, this neighborhood or this corridor or this cluster of neighborhoods is ready. And we'll go ahead and put those projects out to bid. We're not going to be able to wait when we don't want to wait. And I'm certainly you don't want us to wait until 2025 and say, we're going to put out a $40 million paving project to do the whole town at once in one summer. That's just not realistic. And our recovery depends on progress. And we're going to keep it going as best as we can. Okay, so before we get to the Q&A session, I'm going to highlight our future webinars and meetings. We've got our infrastructure recovery update. That's here tonight. And again, the next three are, our next one is going to be Tuesday, June 22nd, the same format. I'm hopeful that we'll get some good or bad feedback about how this is working for you. Our goal is to make this as accessible as possible, whether you're here in person, watching it recorded, or watching it live. So let us know how we can do that better, but this is our plan, and I'm hopeful that you can join us on Tuesday, June 22nd, where the focus of that webinar will be roadway and traffic evacuation planning. I touched on those efforts a little bit here tonight, but that meeting is going to have a much bigger focus on those topics for the day-to-day needs, and then obviously evacuation planning. And then again on July 15th, we'll have a workshop for downtown and Clark Road design standards. This is more focused on the economic development side of the house for design standards for these corridors on both public and private property. And then our last webinar will be in early August, on August 12th, and that will be a focus on bicycling and walking network review. And again, making sure that we're checking all the boxes of what you would like to see as far as what makes sense on these bike paths and these multi-use trails, where you'd like to see those connect and what type of destinations make sense in your mind. So please join us on one of these, all of these. We can't wait to see what's next. Okay, so as I mentioned, we'll have future meetings, and they'll have more questions and more opportunities for public input. And all of this is in creation and leading up to kind of this global view of the Transportation Master Plan. How can we prioritize these projects? What do we want to do with downtown Skyway now that we're literally building a downtown adjacent to Skyway in Almond, Birchford, Black Olive, and Foster? What are our transportation policies? We can ask some questions about that really guide design on future infrastructure projects. And so we can have those discussions moving forward at those meetings, as well as design standards. So again, I hope you're hearing public input is requested throughout. You can find more information on our website, townofparadise.com, recovery, transportation mass, there's a lot there. We have fact sheets here for those in person, and we'll be posting those as well on our website online. Also, last I'll close, so I went through a lot of projects. I do want to mention something we're excited about with the new budget process with Paradise Town Council and the organization is we want to provide an opportunity for you to see these projects more regularly, not just in a webinar, but on your own time, and go on our website. So we're working with a new tool for capital budgeting that really does create a project website for each one of these projects. And you'll be able to log in, or you won't even have to log in, click a couple of times and find out and really see where all these projects are, and find more information about the status and schedule and the cost and all that good information that we know you're interested in. So stay tuned, more in early July. All right, so I've talked a lot. I do need to find some water for a second, but I want to say thank you for everybody that's joined. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will start the Q&A session. And this should be fun. I'm actually really excited to see how this goes in combining in-person and virtual. So we do have some support staff kind of moderating, and they'll see those that are raising their hand virtually. If you like, once you do that, Lindsay will call on you and unmute. You'll have the opportunity to then unmute your microphone, which it should be in the upper right-hand portion of your screen, and you can ask your question. I will certainly do my best. Do we have any hands raised virtually yet?
I don't see any, Mark.
Okay. Well, while maybe those at home are considering if they would like to ask a question, is there anybody here in person tonight that would like to ask a question? Sure. Thank you. Yeah, the podium would be great. We actually have a camera for you. So check this out. Say hi to everybody.
Hello. Okay. Got 3 questions. Number 1, talking about getting started on road renovations. Are those renovations done to current standards, or is it going to be kind of put back?
Well, can you expand a little bit about can you expand just a little bit about what you mean?
Prime example
okay.
is typically now on thoroughfares, 5 foot, 6 foot of shoulder.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and
so
I mean, we get ditches in there. We've got PID lines that are
yep.
actually showing.
Sure. No, I think that's a great question, John. So what I would say is through these funding and these recovery projects through FEMA, FEMA and FHWA, there's a fine line to walk about what's called a betterment, and whether it's my insurance, insurance is you repair what you had through the recovery project. So when it comes to road projects and widening, we have to, in repaving, we have to put back what we had. But as this project and as we have this dialogue about community priorities, they present opportunities to leverage. And so we have really the hardest part funded. And so we have the opportunity we're already looking at striping. How can we make the town safer with striping? Are there opportunities to leverage a project? Say, like, for example, we have a pending grant application for Skyway between Billy and Wagstaff. Say that gets funded. And so if we have the paving funded and we have the sidewalk facilities funded, maybe we can present this information to town council and say, here, everything is ready. All we need is this little piece to leverage and have it be complete. So at this point on the recovery projects that I highlighted tonight, most of those are not, they're not betterments, they're recovery for what we had. But when it comes to road quality, I'll just finish with this, road quality, it's very difficult to put a road that was okay that failed to back to just okay. So I'm so excited.
We're going to have to overestimate.
Oh, absolutely. We can't just ignore, dig outs. We have to repair the problem due to the heavy truck loading and debris removal. So what I'm trying to say is at the end of it, the Paradise is going to have the best roads in Northern California, no question. But as far as when it comes to all the widenings and the pieces that grant programs for recovery, those don't pay for. So we'll identify those gaps and present those to town council and say, are these investments that we can make? And if not, how do we prioritize what we can do?
Last question. Forest Service and Station 2 now basically fire purposes closed. Everybody was promised that. I understand there was a mobile home park in the way and everything else. Then Forest Service Road was extended from Park to Skyway to decrease response times, making up for now that it's vacant, I see that as probably one of our most important projects. Number one is going to decrease response time for fire. Number two, it's going to give crossover evacuation road. And number
Yep. So for those that aren't familiar with Forest Service Road, I brought up and started sharing my screen. Thank you, John. So Forest Service Road is a, believe it or not, a privately owned and maintained road between Clark Road here. And so John was stating, what I heard is that that we agree that Forest Service Road is a priority for improving response times. Again, the same thing we were talking about with flexibility and more tools for evacuation is a connection to Skyway somehow, some way. So this project is identified. I've seen some preliminary work, and I can expect that to be discussed a little bit more at the next workshop with our consultant team on board. But certainly that's on our radar for how we can find an improvement there. Great. No problem. All right, anybody else? Yes, come on up.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah, I thought that was Ron. All right.
That's why I like to ask.
Ron, thank you for coming tonight. Let me get you on, make sure you're on camera here for the group. There you go.
Thanks, Mark. I'm curious, that they're installing those laterals as property. Like, wildly, so many big lots.
Mm-hmm.
How coordinate their installation of laterals prior to.
Right, that's a great question. So for those, I'm just going to repeat the question just in case the audio wasn't great for those online. So one of the projects that Ron brought up was Paradise Irrigation District is currently prioritizing permit applications to replace service lateral connections for water, and that goes from the main to the house. So we will be, we actually have a coordination meeting with PID, a public meeting, a liaison meeting with Paradise Town Council and the PID board to talk about that, among other coordination projects and issues with utility relocations and making this all work together. We understand from the town's perspective, we're all have different roles, like I said, roles to play in the recovery. We're going to do our best and hopeful that while PID's priority to prioritize rebuilds, that eventually they'll reach a point that makes sense to start getting ahead and anticipate rebuilds. Now, if that can't happen, we're going to have a dialogue with the council and the community is where's that decision point where we say we need to move forward and start paving. If everyone else is done and we're waiting on service laterals for vacant lots that we don't know the status, is that something, a risk-based decision that we want to take on whether or not to pave or not to pave? Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll let you know when we figured the answer out. But that's one of many complex issues and definitely on our radar. Thank you, Ron. Sure. Sure. So the question was the hardscape projects, was it due to cleanup efforts or the fire itself? And the answer is it's actually the fire itself. So some areas just got so hot where they compromised the concrete integrity of the sidewalks and they chipped away. And even if they didn't chip away, if there's a building this close to that concrete, it needs to be replaced. So, yep, those are coming out. All right. Any questions? All right. So we've addressed those that are in the room, those questions. So, Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you to see if anyone has raised their hand.
I don't see any raised hands, Mark. We can give it just a minute if you'd like.
Sure. So maybe I will pull up the slide again to show those that might be using Teams for the first time on how to raise your hand. One moment. Okay. So there should be a, up in the upper right, kind of this little smile face with a hand. You click on that, this bar comes over and you can raise your hand there. So if you'd like to ask a question here virtually from wherever you are, you have that opportunity now, and I'll just give it a couple more minutes. And if there are none, we can move on, and we hope to see you at the next one. So I'll just wait here a couple more minutes. I just don't want to end it too soon. But hearing none, just give it a second of silence. Oh. Well, I just got to note that there were some audio issues. That's a challenge. Can someone on, maybe Paul, could you confirm how audio is coming through?
Mark, this is Paul. The audio from you sounds fine. When the speakers have been at the podium, it's been a bit hard to hear. I think
Okay.
you've tried to restate, but your audio sounds good.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, seeing no hands raised, and I guess we'll go ahead and call it a night. And Lindsay, you just raised your hand to show what that looks like. But barring no further questions from the audience here, seeing none, I guess I'll just say thank you so much for your time, and we're really grateful for your desire to be engaged, and hope that you'll join us at future workshops. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please do not hesitate to reach out to town staff directly. Myself, my contact information is on the website, or attend a town council meeting. We really just can't wait to guide this infrastructure recovery with you in mind. So with that, we'll sign off and see you in a couple of weeks. We didn't talk about closing it.